Hi, my name is Linda Burns, and I'm the Creative Conference Director for Atlanta Film Festival. Back in 2020, when COVID shut down the world, we pivoted to an all-virtual platform, and for 3 years brought you the most incredibly intimate discussions on the craft of filmmaking. We're moving all of these conversations to this YouTube channel and can't wait to share them with you all for free. Like and share your favorite videos, and please subscribe to this channel. And if you want more information about ATLFF, Atlanta Film Festival, go to atlantafilmfestival.com. Thanks and enjoy. Hey, welcome everyone to the Creative Conference. This is the soon-to-be famous Ebo twins. They had a film at Sundance called Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul. It started as a short film and then was expanded into a feature. And a lot of people see people come out of Sundance and think, oh, it's an overnight success. But these ladies are not an overnight success. They've been around for a little bit, grinding and doing a lot of really good work. But I want to start by saying, hi, welcome.
Hi, great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. I know you guys are in process of shooting in Atlanta, and I'm glad to see you're making another film here. So let's start with, where did you guys grow up and how did you end up in Atlanta?
Oh, so we grew up in Metro Atlanta. Yeah. Actually, we're from the East Side. Grew up in the Lithonia, Decatur area, and so this is Atlanta's what we know. Atlanta's what we know. I know there's like letters right there. That's our high school letters, Southwest DeKalb High School. Yeah. So we're locals.
Excellent. But you live in LA now, correct?
We live in LA now. We live in LA, yeah.
Which makes sense. You got to move out there. Everybody else, we always lose our people to LA. I hate it.
Oh no, we're trying to come back.
We're coming back.
And like this as soon as possible. We're coming back.
Like in the next 2 years, at least. At least. Yeah.
Nice. So how did you go from, let me back up a little bit in my brain. When did you decide that you wanted to make films? Like, have you always grown up loving movies, or, grew up writing and acting things out in the backyard? How did your career come about, or your love of film?
Yeah, I mean, definitely.
Short answer, yes.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we're millennials, and we were definitely like TV kids. We had the television on all the time. We watched movies with our parents all of the time. And we are also really, really big readers. That's a bookshelf behind us. This is our manga bookshelf, but we have another bookshelf with just like actual like novels. And so we read constantly. And so
also big gamers.
And so big gamers.
Everything that has to do with like consuming story and storytelling, we were into.
Yeah. And so, in hindsight, telling stories was definitely going to be like, the route or the path, but it took us a little bit to decide that, or to realize that we actually wanted to make this a career. I didn't
know that we even could.
Yeah, because like Atlanta's different now. When we were growing up, there wasn't this huge, TV and film community here. And so, I took my first screenwriting class in undergrad. In college, I went to Spelman College, or we both went to Spelman College in Atlanta.
But later on in college too. Like,
I was like a senior.
There was no film major.
There was no film major or anything. I was a creative writing minor because I grew up writing short stories as well, and like creative nonfiction. And so I took a screenwriting class just because I was like, oh yeah, look, I like TV and movies. I'll do that as part of my minor. And then, obviously fell head over heels for it, and decided that that's what I was going to do. I was going to not go to law school, which had been the plan. And
for both of us.
Yeah. And then go to film school instead. Yeah. And so that's what I did. And then I ended up going to UCLA, which is what took me to Los Angeles.
Yeah. And then I did go to law school. I went to Northwestern in Chicago, and then decided that I did not want to be a lawyer, at least not forever. And Adamma was already at UCLA at the time, and she asked me to produce one of her short films for school. And so I did that and fell in love with it, and decided to move to LA after graduating law school. And we just continued the creative partnership. The producer, writer, director partnership kind of morphed into, it's still that, but also morphed into like a writing partnership. And then we just pursued that with the hopes of one day becoming full-time creatives. And we were able to manage to do that in
2020.
January 2020.
Yeah.
So what led you to Northwestern? Because I mean, it's a great school, but that's a massive culture shock. I mean, I love Chicago. I grew up across the lake in Benton Harbor, St. Joe, Michigan.
Oh, okay.
But you know, that's cold country. Like going from nice, warm, you know, southern Georgia to Chicago is like a big change.
It was a humongous change for me. I think, well, I think culturally the people are similar to the South. Like they're not, it's not like New York where like they say hi to you and they're warmer than a lot of other places. But the weather was not to be played with. I got my coat in August, like as soon as I moved for school, because I was like, I don't know when winter's going to hit, but I need to be prepared. But what led me there is that it was just I fell in love with the school. It was a great school and great community. I also really like Chicago, even though it's winter 9 months out of the year. I do really like the city, and I just saw myself going there. But you know, it was only for the 3 years of law school. I had to get out of there.
So did you take any entertainment law classes, or was it like too late?
No. I did. I think even when my track was to be a lawyer forever, I always knew I wanted to be in entertainment because I loved television, film, gaming, all of that. And so I did your first year, you kind of take kind of like the set requirements of courses. But after that, I took as many courses that would be applicable to entertainment. So there was an entertainment law class. I took copyright, I took intellectual property, all that type of stuff I took.
So yeah, you guys are like a serious combination. Like, you know, I mean, because you both have the creative side and then adding to the business side. And I know UCLA, you were not just taking probably directing and producing classes, they also teach business classes, but that entertainment law side is certainly helpful when you're negotiating contracts and just reading contracts and understanding them.
It's definitely
I knew absolutely nothing about the business side. There was not, that didn't happen.
But and I will say, like, law school helped, but I was a business affairs executive for 3.5 years before going full-time creative. And so the actual practicality of working in the entertainment law and in business affairs space is what is ended up being really helpful.
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid of contracts. I used to be really annoying with our agents and lawyers, and I'm like, can I just see every draft of everything that comes through? I just want to look at it. And I had to take a step back and be like, you're paying these people to do their jobs, let them do you, and you do
I will say though, having spent many hours listening in on the phone to the overpriced lawyers that I paid in LA, I learned so much about entertainment law. Like that, I was like, just let me sit on the phone. I swear to God, I won't speak, but I just want to listen to the conversation. And it was fascinating and certainly helped a lot. So don't back down on that.
We definitely still look at absolutely, and our reps and our lawyers know to send over all of the stuff, and they're amazing. Yeah, they take it.
They talk us through everything. Yeah.
So when you first wrote, so I know you guys did a bunch of shorts. You were doing short films, and then was the first film that kind of got attention for the labs and fellowships, Honk for Jesus, the short? Or was it the fabulously named Super Shorty Girls Funkadelic Robo Magic Bang? I love that is the greatest title ever.
For the labs,
for the Sundance Labs, it was Honk. It was
Honk the short script, right?
Not for the Sundance Labs. The Atlanta Film. It did the Atlanta Film Festival screenplay competition. Honk the short. But Honk the feature did one of the Sundance Labs, the Sundance Screenwriting Intensive, and then we did together the Sundance Episodic Lab was one of our television projects.
Got it. Yeah, you guys had a really big year in 2019. I mean, you hit the Film Independent Fellowship with Project Involved. You were at the Screenwriters Intensive and the Episodic Lab. Talk a little bit about those programs, and because there's a lot of people who apply to programs. I mean, there's so many creatives in Atlanta, and they're trying to get a foothold, and they're applying for these things, and the application process and interview processes can be very difficult, but talk about that process and then what those experiences were like.
Yeah, well, for me, I did Project Involved on the producing track because I love producing. And but I didn't go. There's all types of reasons to do Project Involve. It's a great program, but for me, I didn't go to film school, and I felt like I was at a little bit of a deficit because of it. Which, you know, you don't have to go to film school to do any of this, but like,
not at all.
I just wanted more experience, and I wanted more experience with working with other people other than my sister, even though that's my main creative partnership. And so I did Project Involve, and it was, you know, for me, it was like, it's like a year. It's almost like it lasts a year, and it mirrors the actual complete film production process from development through post-production and distribution. Right. And I wanted to experience that. And so it was great for me. The application process was, you know, maybe we're just used to doing applications.
We are. We had to apply to so much stuff as like kids and teenagers.
Yeah.
My mom had us do mock interviews constantly.
Yeah. So we're pretty good at like applications and interviews and stuff like that. But you do have to come prepared. Like they request samples of your work because they want to know that you've kind of done something along these lines before. So making sure your samples are up to par. And then just come in and be a good interviewee and you know, be prepared to talk about yourself and your work and what you hope to get out of the program. And then for Sundance, Project Involved, then the intensive was next.
And then the intensive, yeah. And for that, actually, one of my UCLA professors recommended me for it. They were like, I feel like you probably have like a feature in the works, and I think that the Sundance Labs would be good for you to apply to. And so I did. And that process was really, it was submitting, I think the first like 10 pages at first of the script, and then you submit the entire thing. If you make it to the next round. And then there's like a phone interview. But again, I think the most important part of that process is like writing the thing. I mean, they don't want like screenplays, which I think is important for people to know. They don't want ones that are like ready to be produced right now, because they want to help you like cultivate it and craft it and stuff like that. But it shouldn't be the very first draft. Right. I've done that. I did that before and definitely didn't get into the program that I was trying to get into. It should have definitely had some more than one draft. It should have been worked on. But you know, they're looking for like room to grow and to expand in these programs. Yeah, and it's the same thing with the Sundance Episodic Lab. Yeah, for episodic, it's for television writing. So you turn in the first round, the first 5 pages along with the application, and then if you get to the next round, you turn in the full thing, and then after that, there are interview stages, and then hopefully you get in. And we cannot like hype up the Sundance Labs enough. We love the Sundance Labs. Truthfully, it's how the Sundance Labs was our catalyst to becoming full-time creatives. Yeah. But the labs in and of itself, first of all, it lasts for a couple of months in totality, and some of it is based in LA, but like the full lab itself takes place in Utah at the Sundance Resort on the mountains, and it's just it's like going on a retreat, and you really do like we made like lifelong friendships with a bunch of other creatives, but you really are able to hone in on your work and really cultivate it to the best that it can be. And you go through rounds of pitching it. You have showrunners who come in and help you cultivate your script. And honestly, the Sundance Labs are what got our TV project to the point where it was ready to be sold. We sold it like a few months after that. Like the Sundance Labs were in October, and in January or February we sold the script.
And was that Super Shorty with
no, this is that's a different this one, because Super Shorty Girls is animated. But this one was an hour-long live action series
called Supply 404.
So what happened to it?
Well, we sold it to a studio, and we developed it for a little bit. And we just February actually of this year, we pitched it to networks, and we have a couple of offers. We can't say where yet, but we have a couple of offers on the table for it.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So coming out of 2019, I mean, you had also, I think, sold the Super Shorty Girls, the animated.
Oh, that's right. That's true. That was
2019, right?
Yeah, that was in 2019.
2019 was hectic. We keep saying.
Yeah, I mean, that was a huge year.
Every year we're like, okay, this is gonna be a calmer year, and it's not. But it's all good. It's all like
2019
of course it's all good.
But 2019, you're right, was the turning point because we were
was.
both still working full time.
Yeah,
Sorry, go
ahead.
I was still a business affairs executive full time,
and I was an assistant. I was a showrunner's assistant.
Right, but 2019 was the turning point where we shifted to becoming full time creative. So yeah, so we sold SSBB. That's what we call for short, Super Shawty Girls, Funkomatic, Robo Magic Bang Bang. We sold that to 20th Century Fox, or just 20th Century now, not Fox. And Tiffany Haddish is producing.
So to back up a little bit, so you worked in business affairs and you worked as a showrunner's assistant. How did you start in those jobs? What made you gravitate toward those jobs? I mean, obviously showrunner's assistant was a fabulous place to learn.
Yeah.
But how did you get those jobs? I mean, did you get agents out of the Sundance Lab, or were you still kind of working stuff yourself? And if you didn't have agents yet, I'll get to that question when I hit Sundance. But
I think we had agents by the time Sundance.
We had agents before the lab.
Yeah, actually. Before the lab.
Like right before.
Yeah.
Did you get those out of school? Like how, because most people don't have, like, where did that come from? How did you get it?
It's really like this, I don't know if there's a typical way to get representation, but the way we did it it has to be completely atypical.
Very atypical. So
I'm completely by happenstance.
Yeah. So I'm a member of this organization called Women in Animation because we love animation. And the organization like co-hosted this event with Netflix about women in animation, and because Netflix has like a bunch of women creators and showrunners who are doing like animated content specifically for Netflix. And so I went to the event and I ended up running my mouth about how there were no Black women on the panel. I was like, this is great, but where are all the Black women and Latino women? There were like none. And so I ran my mouth about that. And then after that, like during the mixer part of the event, this woman came up to me and said she really liked what I had to say. And then she gave me her card, and she was an agent at UTA. And
she's Chris Nee's agent as well, who's the creator of Doc McStuffins.
Yeah. And so I'm a very opportunistic person, especially then, because I was looking to transition out of being a business affairs executive. And so after she gave me her card, I sent all of mine and Adamma's materials. I was like, this is what we're working on, blah, 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 all this stuff. And she was like, this is amazing. I want to bring you guys in immediately. And basically we met
with the whole team,
and they said, we want to represent you. So that was with UTA. And we're still with UTA to this day. So that was very atypical. That was how we got our agents.
But I will say that when we were prepared for that, you know what I mean? Like when she gave Adanne her card, we had a draft of Honk already, like a few drafts of Honk already.
A draft of SSBB.
A draft of SSBB.
A draft of Supply.
A draft of Supply, and we had a couple of like pitches for other projects that we were cultivating.
And we had our short films too.
And we had our short films.
A couple of those.
And we had a teaser for SSBB that we had crowdfunded while I was in film school. Mm-hmm. And so we just had all of this stuff. And so it's like,
you got to be prepared for any.
Yeah, it's like meeting people is not really the hard part. Right. Like you can get into these spaces with people. It's like making the most of those opportunities, because you can tell people like you're a writer, you're a director, and they're going to say,
what are you working on?
What are you working on, or what do you have? And I found that like so many people are like, oh, well, I'm still like working on this, or I'm thinking about this. They don't have actual materials, even if it's not the final version of it.
Yeah,
have stuff. Like,
I mean, none of our stuff was the final version of it.
None of it. Yeah, it's like you got to have the stuff to show to people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
2 lessons there. 1, run your mouth, especially about diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
My husband is a first AD. I used to be a producer. I've been to Sundance myself, so. But, you know, my push is always for him to have a diverse group of people in his AD staff, not just PAs, like it's got to be the ADs too. Absolutely. So work with me. But yeah, you need to be calling out that stuff more. And 2, the come prepared thing is so important. I'm watching a director that I mentor right now who had one of those meetings, and this guy just left one major company, went to another one, and she's been offered an opportunity to come out and shadow, but not till she has something to show.
Right.
And she has been so involved. You know, we started this conversation last November, and it's April 15th. And I'm still looking at a pile of nothing. And I'm like,
those opportunities are for people who are prepared. So well done.
Gotta be prepared.
Yeah, that's
And also
great.
we
You
like
had
it.
so
Like
much.
I don't think that I could not.
Yeah.
I don't think we could not create if we wanted to. We had all of that stuff because that we sit around daydreaming and then put it on paper.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to back up to something that has become very apparent in the short time we're talking. Support staff. Like the fact that your mom made you practice like interviews, like all that stuff seems silly, but I don't think people really understand how important that is. Can you talk a little bit about, because usually when you say, well, I'm going to go to film school or I'm going to make movies, parents are like, or anything in the arts, parents are like, well, no, law school, go make a living somewhere, bless you. So, talk a little bit about how supportive your mom or parents or family has been of this dream, because I think that's a pretty relevant component to your success as well. Obviously, you're both very smart and very talented, but you had a lot of people really support and nurture that.
Yeah, well, no, our parents, both of our mom and dad are equally smarter than us, and very talented. But they, they got
the support grew. I was the first person to deviate from the law school plan. And to be fair, it was the last semester of our senior year of college.
Yeah, you didn't time it well.
And so they were the rug was definitely pulled out from under them. And so they were very, and
it was literally after you already took the LSAT.
Yeah, so, I took the LSAT and everything. It was not fair, I will say. But the rug was definitely pulled out from underneath them, and they were concerned. They're both in the medical field. And so I said they heard film school and they heard starving artists, which to be fair is not untrue, but there are definitely ways that I think people that don't get talked about enough to make a living in the industry before you have a full creative career. But so they were really concerned, but
it helped that I did go to law school.
It helped that I went to law school, but I think it also helped that I had like a plan.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, they both have gone to like graduate school and stuff like that. And so I was like, well, I'm going to go to graduate school. I'm not going to just move out to LA and like, I guess, become a waiter and try to rough it, which, is a completely viable way to enter the industry. A lot of people do it.
Yeah.
And a lot of people make their way doing that. My mother and father would have had a conniption. And so I was like, I'm going to do it the way that is like
in their brains
a feasible way for them, which is to go to school.
Yeah.
And also because I had always written, but I wanted to direct. And so I didn't know too much about directing at that point. So I was like, I could benefit from going to school. And so what I told them, my dad's Nigerian. And so what I said was, and my mom might as well be. And so what I said was, I'm going to only apply to the top 5 film schools in the country. And so they heard that and heard prestige. Didn't know that you didn't actually need the degree to do the thing, but that's fine. And so that's what I did. And I got into most of them and then ended up going to UCLA, and UCLA gave me a full ride to come. And so at that point, I was like 22, almost 23. And so they were like, go do the thing. If it's a mistake, you'll have plenty of time. You're young, you'll have plenty of time to like do something else. And so luckily it wasn't, and they're completely on board now. They quickly got on board. I think it was my first year of law school, and they saw film school, and they saw the first film that I made, and they were like, oh, this could be nice.
Yeah. They're over the moon about it now.
Yeah.
Like, super supportive.
Very into it.
Every single way.
We're in our like their house right now. Our mom is downstairs.
Yeah. Listening probably to this.
So after you finished at UCLA, is that how you got the showrunner's gig through UCLA, or how did that come about? Or what did you
actually? Oh, that was me.
I think most of my jobs have come through Adanne, to be honest.
Yeah, because where I was working as a business affairs executive, I worked at Endeavor, which is, I worked at Endeavor Content, which is like the studio side of things, but also WME, the agency, it's kind of like a sister company. And there was this listserv where people would send through like jobs, basically, like mostly assistant jobs and stuff like that, because people were looking to go to like production companies or other studios or management companies and stuff like that. And a lot of people want to be writers. So there would be a bunch of like writers assistants, showrunners assistant positions that come through. And I saw one in particular that looked interesting. And so I sent it to Adamma. I was like, you should apply to this.
And it was like a summer like research
Right.
position at first for this guy, David Matthews, who was working on a project and he needed like an assistant to help him research and like organize things for a feature he was working on. And so I interviewed with him and we had a really, really good interview and like really vibed. And then I didn't get the gig. And he emailed me afterwards and he was like, basically he went with someone who was like a friend of a family friend or something like that. And he was like, it was hard for me to say no to this, but you know, I definitely want to stay in contact and we should, you know, keep in contact. And so we did. And I ended up getting another job actually through Adanne, where I was an assistant to the president of DreamWorks Feature Animation. And then this guy, David Matthews, Adanne was clutch for a lot of things. But
yeah, well, she may be clutch for that, but you still walked in the door and got the job. Like,
yeah,
this is why when I introduced you, I was like, soon to be superstars, because like
made you go through a few rounds too.
I went through a few. I went through a lot of rounds because like I like kind of shouldn't have gotten the job because I didn't really have. They wanted someone with experience, like a year on someone's desk, and I think at that point I had been interning for like 8 months or so at a place right out of film school. And so it wasn't quite, it was pretty applicable, and it's not, you know, it's not like rocket science to be an assistant, but which is why I don't understand why you have to have a bachelor's degree to do it. But anyway, gatekeeping. And so, but I think what I did was I think I nailed the interview with Chris DeFaria, who was the president over there at the time. And so I came on, but then he was leaving. And so I was trying to decide if I was going to stay at DreamWorks, would go to another desk. And then this guy, David Matthews, emails me and he's like, hey, I'm going to be show running a show for Amazon. Do you want to come be my assistant? And
it was literally the exact.
He told me before Chris DeFaria was leaving DreamWorks. And I was like, oh, I just started this other gig. I would love to, but I just started this other gig. And then Chris announced he was leaving. And so I emailed Dave and I was like, is the position still open? And he was like, yeah. And so
he was doing his last interview.
He was doing his last interviews. He was like, can you chat about it like tomorrow? And I was like, yeah. And then I got it.
That one was serendipitous for sure.
Yeah. And so I had met the guy basically like a year and a half before I actually started working for him and didn't get a job with him previously.
Yeah.
And so, but both of those opportunities came through Adanne.
But that's how things happen. And again, you kind of just have to be prepared. Like you have to be able to show people, because like both Chris and Dave saw your work, like read your work.
That's true. Yeah, they did.
You got to be prepared.
Well, someone said something that I had never thought about before and wish I would have known when I started my career 30 years ago. No isn't always no. It just means not now.
Especially not in this business.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, and people don't understand that sometimes just because something fell apart here doesn't mean it's going to circle around over here. So talk about what it was like working as a showrunner's assistant and how valuable that experience was.
Oh, completely valuable. It's especially as someone who aims to be a showrunner, hopefully soon. Please soon. I learned so much. I mean, as an assistant in general, especially if you have like a good boss, and I had an amazing boss.
Shout out to Dave.
Yeah, he was really invested in me learning a lot. Apparently showrunners aren't usually like in the writer's room during
or their assistants,
or the showrunners' assistants aren't usually in the writers' rooms. But he was like, I want you to be, I know you want to be a writer. I want you to be in the room every day. And I was in the room every day.
Wow.
He let me contribute. He let all of the assistants like take a crack at writing like scenes and stuff like that. It was transformative. And like being on all of the calls with like studio execs and producers and
so you got the best of both worlds.
I got the best of both worlds and see, I got to see the casting process. I saw it all the way through like hiring writers, and then like obviously on through production. Like I was on set every single day and I learned a ton about what the process is actually like. It's so hard to conceptualize.
Well, I don't think we knew that showrunners ran the show and therefore were writers. Yeah. But I don't think we knew that they were also producers. Like you have to in everything. Like you have to be in every meeting. You have to pick out like every prop that's gonna go in every frame of the show. You literally are running this, like you run the whole thing.
Yeah.
From top to bottom.
Yeah. I also learned a ton about what I will not be doing as a showrunner. There was just a lot happening, and not necessarily like the showrunner, but just how everyone, the team communicated. I'm like, okay, this is a really good way to do things. Okay, this is maybe a way that I would do something different. It was just like, it was completely eye-opening and 100% prepared me for my own independent creative career.
So what made you decide to take Honk for Jesus from a short to Honk for Jesus, Save Your Soul, the feature?
So Honk was actually a feature before it was a short.
Yeah.
It was the first feature I'd ever written, and I wrote it in a feature writing class at UCLA. It was completely different and had a different name and everything. But the core of it was very much the same. And so what happened was my first year at UCLA was 2014, and that was the year Whiplash came out. And the director, Damien Chazelle, and his editor, Tom Cross, came and talked to my editing class. And they told us that Whiplash was a short as a proof of concept for the feature, because, you know, Damien was saying how like, it was a bit of a hard concept for people to grasp onto.
Just
like,
conceptually.
It's like a thriller about jazz, and everyone's like, well, I don't know what that is. And so he made the short, and people were like, oh, this is really cool. And I was like, that is a really smart idea. And so I decided that my thesis project at UCLA, and this was my first year, but I decided in that moment that my final project, my thesis project at UCLA, will be a short version of a feature. I was just like, whatever, I didn't know what it was going to be at that point. I was just like, whatever it is, that's what it's going to be. And then when I took my first feature writing class, I was like, I think this could make an interesting short if I could figure out a way to sort of like condense it to like its most, I guess, its most thrilling properties for 15 minutes or so. And so that's what I did. And so it was a feature, and then I made the short. And then I had to work it back around to a feature, because the feature that the short came out was very different. So it kind of went through all of these weird stages.
So, and I've done the same thing. Feature, we made it into a short. It was a garage musical. People couldn't understand a musical with old people about death. So yeah, it was very bizarre. You know, it was very kind of a garage musical, more kind of like rock and roll than, you know, High School Musical.
Right.
But we did the same thing because it was such a weird concept. People couldn't understand it. And then, you know, it was really meant to be a feature. When you went to Sundance, I know a lot of times in the labs, they hook you up with actors that in the end sometimes become the actors who are in the feature. Was that the case with Regina and Sterling? Or, okay. So how did that come about? How did you end up with those two fabulous actors? Because they were fantastic. I mean, Regina is incredible in this movie.
She's incredible, and she's been incredible for decades. And so when we first got our, so what did happen at Sundance at the intensive was that they held this little mixer after the first day or so. And during the mixer is when we met our producing partners, 59%, which is like Rowan Riley, Darren Kalua, and Amanda Critchlow. And so we met them, we really vibed. And so all of us got together and like had coffee or something. And Daniel asked me, who do I see as the lead in the movie? And I told him, and obviously like, we were 30, and so we grew up with Regina Hall's movies. And so I told him a Regina Hall type, because I was like, I need someone who's like
had the range,
fabulous, but had the range, you know what I mean? Like someone who could do the really, really like gut-bustingly funny stuff, but someone who could really tap into the dramatic stuff as well. So I said a Regina Hall type because I obviously didn't think I was going to get Regina Hall for my first feature. But our other producer, Rowan, was like, oh, I'm friendly with her agent. I can slip him the script and see what he thinks about it for her. And he thought it was great for her. And so he gave it to Regina, and Regina loved it. And so we met. It was a lovely meeting, and it was off to the races then. And so basically I was just like, this is the prototype. What can I get? And luckily someone knew the prototype.
Yeah, it's all about connections,
Yeah.
really. And I think Sterling was something similar. I can't remember how Sterling's name first
Sterling
came
came a while afterwards.
Yeah,
I can't remember how his name came up
we
either.
had been looking for like the perfect Lee Curtis, but also the perfect complement to Regina, because
Yeah.
at that point we already had Regina on board. I can't remember how Sterling's name came up, but I remember we were like, wait, is Sterling funny? Because
Yeah.
like we were like, we've seen him do obviously like This Is Us and People versus OJ and Waves and all these like really, really dramatic, like we're used to him making us like cry and not cry from laughter necessarily. And we were like, okay, like aesthetically, he was like perfect compliment to Regina and perfect, Lee Curtis.
Yeah.
But we ended up scrolling through like his IMDb or something and to see if he had done any comedy. And we saw that he was on an episode, he guest starred on an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine. And we were like, oh, that's interesting. And so we put on the episode and he was hilarious. He plays
really
like
funny
this
in it.
murderous dentist.
I actually think he might have got nominated for
He
best
did.
guest performance.
He did. He got
For an
nominated
Emmy.
for an Emmy for that. And we were like, okay, this is perfect. And again, connections and networks are everything, because I have a producer friend who Sterling was starring in a movie that he was producing. And so I called him, I was like, Steven, can you hook me up with Sterling, basically? And Steven gave me his manager's information. We ended up slipping the script to his manager, who loved it for him.
Nice.
His manager gave it to Sterling and Sterling loved it. We got on a phone call with Sterling, like just us and Sterling. And we were like, almost immediately, we were like, this is
It
right. Was just a feeling. We were like, this is right. And then we got Regina and Sterling on a Zoom together, and the chemistry was like instantaneous. Like it was
you would have thought they like were best friends in high school or something like that.
Or
like,
had at least worked together before.
Yeah.
They hadn't, that was
the first time they met was at our very first table read in Atlanta.
That was the first time they met
in person. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was just, and I was like, this is it. These are our leads.
Yeah.
Nice. So I'm going to back up again a little bit. So coming out of 2019, you'd hit the Sundance Labs, you'd hit Film Independent, you've got all this momentum coming into 2022, and then kapow, the world shuts down.
Yeah.
The pandemic hit. So how did that, watching your film, I was like, what a perfect film to shoot during a pandemic, because there's no flock to the church, essentially.
Yeah.
So it's like, it seems like the perfect movie to shoot during a pandemic, but like, how did that, you had so much momentum coming into 2022 and then things completely out of your control changed. Like, did you keep working as if nothing had happened, or did suddenly like all of your momentum stop, and like what was happening in that time frame?
Yeah, I think
we kind of kept going.
I think, career-wise, our momentum did not slow down at all. And in fact, it only increased. I think specifically because we could still do writers' rooms remotely. And so
we were writing a lot of TV.
We ended up pitching a lot. We ended up selling stuff. And so
I'm sorry. So you have both been hired as writers in writers' rooms?
We're
gonna back up to that. So I missed that. I've been doing my research and apparently I missed that. Let's talk about the writers' room a little bit. How did you both get your first jobs in the writers' room, and how has that gone?
Yeah, so we did the Sundance Episodic Lab together as a writing partners, and the director of the Sundance Episodic Lab put us up for our first writers' room job.
Wow.
And so
she was like, I know someone who is starting a writers' room soon. They're looking for like very particular, like specific writers. I think you guys would be great for it. Y'all should go interview for it.
Yeah. Again, shout out to the Sundance Labs. I think
they really care about their participants' careers. Like, and I feel like everyone in our cohort is doing really, really well.
Literally everyone is either making their own shows or their own movies or both. Like they really are invested in cultivating your career.
Yeah.
So she put us up for the job and we got it. And that was that started in January 2020. And so that was how we were able to become full-time creatives. Was we got staffed in a writer's room.
So what was that like? Because you've been, as twins, that's a unique relationship. You're not just sisters, you're twins. So how did how was that transition from we're a team together to, oh, now we have to entertain everyone else's thoughts and feelings? And when you're first starting out as a staff writer, a lot of times you're not doing all the things that you think you would be doing as a staff writer. Sometimes you're just shutting up and listening to what happens in the room. So how was that transition from the team to a huge team or a bigger team?
It was super seamless,
Yeah,
actually.
it was super seamless, I think, because I think each of us are just naturally collaborative people, so it didn't feel tough. And I think also because
well, we've worked on like teams our entire lives.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
We played a ton of sports, team sports. We were in like band, which is like you are as an instrument just one of a huge whole.
Mm-hmm.
And so like teamwork has always been a thing for us, but also like
you had also had experience in a writer's room technically already.
And as a showrunner's assistant, I had been in a writer's room every day, and so I knew how I operated.
We did mock writers' rooms
at Sundance,
and stuff like that. So I feel like we went in prepared.
Yeah, as prepared as possible.
As prepared as possible. But I also think honestly, all of our writers' rooms have been charmed. Especially our first one, because we went in with the expectation people had horror stories about being a first-time staff writer and stuff like that. And I think it was just a complete opposite in our first in all our writers' rooms, but I think specifically the first, because we were expecting something different, and we were, lower level writers at that point.
Yeah.
But they were like, basically like, we didn't hire you to sit there. We're not paying you to sit there. So please pitch, please contribute.
They were like, please speak up. They were we wrote a script, which doesn't always happen for we got to sign staff writing job. Yeah. And so it's like, we had an amazing experience. The creator and the main producer, they were both women, and
the room was mostly
women. And our two showrunners, they were guys, but they were like very much like, we understand this is a show about a woman, so we're letting y'all take the lead on this. It was extremely collaborative and a beautiful first writers' room experience. And again, an experience where I was like, this is how I would like run a room.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's good to know, because I didn't say anything, but I was thinking when you were like, yeah, I want to be a showrunner really soon. I'm like, you got some work to do. Like, you got to work your way. And so I didn't know that you had been in a writer's room.
Oh, yeah.
But I should have aessed.
We've done three rooms by the
nice.
Yeah.
And honestly, like, there's this thing now where like, we're essentially going to be showrunners very soon, because we have two shows that are hopefully going to, our own original shows that are going to hopefully go pretty quickly. So, but yeah. So,
well, and the beauty of a lot of writers have never been on set before, and they don't know what that experience is like. So the fact that you've been in a writer's room and you've both been on set and know what that experience is like and understand the process from beginning to end, from all the stuff you've worked on, means you're going to be very successful showrunners. So I look forward to seeing what you guys do. All right. So talk a little bit about what the writer's room is like for people who don't understand how that works.
Oh, okay. So basically the writer's room is almost exactly what it sounds like, right? It's a group of writers who sit in a room and we basically come up with the story for a television show episode by episode. And so there's a lot of bullshitting too. There's always a period where we just sit back and talk about nothing, and then we're like, okay, it's time to get to work. But a lot of times
they're talking about nothing ends up contributing to like story or character. So it's like all worth it.
It's all in service of the room. And so that's basically, I would say a writer's room is like, I describe it as like a writer's 9 to 5, because it's stable. It is literally you're working
every day.
It's every day. You literally work like a set amount of hours, and then you
get paid weekly.
And you get paid weekly, and it's really good. A lot of people ask like, what's a viable way to be a full-time creative? That is the only way we were able to become full-time creatives, is via writer's room. And I know there's some people don't want to write for TV and stuff like that. We love TV and film equally, but I would also say it's practical. If you want to be in the industry, be like actually being paid to hone your craft, I feel like TV writing is it doesn't, and then get paid really well.
Especially now, there's so much TV.
Oh my God, there's so much TV. There's so many opportunities. So that's what a writer's room basically is that there's a group of writers and there's a hierarchy, right? So staff writers are essentially like entry level. That's like your entry level writer. And then you go up, there a few other steps, and then showrunner / creator are at the top. And that's essentially what it is. And writers' rooms don't always operate the same way. Like we've been in 3, right?
Mm-hmm.
We've been in 3 different writers' rooms, and they've all operated differently. But that is kind of like the core of what a writer's room is.
Right.
Yeah.
So what are the takeaways that you feel like you mentioned earlier that there are some things that you would do and some things that you wouldn't do without obviously throwing anybody under the bus? What are some of the things that you took away from that? Is there like a top 3 lessons learned of things that you want to make sure you do when you run your own room and things that you want to make sure don't happen when you run your own room?
Yes,
Yeah.
I would say so from our first writer's room, the EP, so like her name's Julie Pleck, and she's made, made a bunch of different shows and has a bunch of different shows going at the same time.
And shoots in Atlanta all the time.
And she shoots in Atlanta all the time.
I tried to get her for the creative conference last year and she's so busy that it was.
I actually don't know how she does everything.
Yeah, I don't know.
What we didn't realize is, and this is back when everything was in person, and I think it's even more manageable when you do it remote, but back when everything was in person, she had her office, like her office, and she had all of her writers' rooms in the same like big office space, and she would literally hop from room to room. So we never felt like she was missing though, which is crazy because I know she went to the other room. Anyway, we're people who always have more than one thing going, and she was just a really, really great example of how to do that seamlessly. Is how to manage multiple projects, multiple shows at once, and do it flawlessly. She was great at it.
Yeah.
What's something that we learned that we wouldn't do?
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I have something. Do you have something?
No, I'm thinking.
I think something. We were on another show where there were essentially 2 creators, 2 people who were like the big bosses. As in like the buck stops with them.
Right.
And if they weren't in agreement on something, then essentially we're at a standstill. And since we create everything together, we would be in a similar situation. And so I think we learned that we would always be on the same page before coming to the room. And if something comes up during the room and we have to take some time out, we make sure that we address those after the room, but always come back the next day with the problem solved, at least between us.
Right. So I know you're obviously both very smart and professionals, but you're still sisters. And even as twins, like one's older, one's younger, like, I know how all that drama works. So like, it's hard enough when you're like a husband and wife team or just 2 random people, but when you're sisters and identical twins and partners, like, how do you resolve that stuff? Like, does it just come? I mean, is there ever a point where you're just like, okay, you win, I give up? Or do you just talk it out to death until one side is convinced the other? Because there's a whole lot more drama than just we're, writing partners.
Yeah, that's a good question. I want to say that our creative relationship is not dissimilar to our personal relationship.
Yeah.
And, we've been doing that forever. And so I feel like it has to resolve. I haven't thought about it like that before. It has to resolve like pretty similarly.
I will say that we, like our immediate family, like our mom, our dad, and us, we're talkers. Like we sit down and we talk through stuff a lot. And so I feel like that's how you and I end up.
Yeah, I think we just talk it to death until we reach a place where it's like, okay, this is the way to go.
Usually we talk it to death and we find the solution.
Yeah. And it's often a compromise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is a great way to work. And hopefully it's magic.
It works for us.
So let's talk a little bit going back to Honk for Jesus, Save Our Soul. So it's such a great movie. So going to Sundance, you'd been to the labs, but you hadn't experienced having your first film, which is a whole different experience. I had been to Sundance because I wanted to go check it out. And then the film I actually left the last 4 days of shooting for was the film that ended up going to Sundance because I, booked it out a year in advance.
Yeah.
So when we all went, like I was the only person who'd ever been there. So I became like the Sundance mom, like here's where we should stay and here's the restaurants and here's what to expect from press and the craziness. When you went, what did you think was going to be the outcome? I mean, in the end, Focus Features, Peacock, and Jordan Peele's MonkeyPaw Productions bought it, which had to be mind-blowing in itself. And I know you've been to Utah and it's beautiful and you get a lay of the land, during you were there. Was the lab happening when the festival was happening, I assume?
No.
So the lab.
You hadn't seen the craziness.
No. And we didn't see it this year because Sundance was virtual.
Yeah, they went virtual at the last minute. So now I feel bad. I'm sorry I even asked that question.
No, it's no. I mean, we honestly still had a very.
And first of all, the movie still sold the main.
That was the main part.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a bad time.
But I think also like we were bummed at first. But I'm a everything happens for a reason type of person. Yeah. And I think Sundance being virtual meant that more people got to see the movie than would have happened if it were in person. There was still like online passes, but they made when it went completely virtual, they upped the number of screenings and passes, and so way more people got to see the movie, which is what movies are for. And then obviously at that point we didn't know what was going to happen with the movie, and so there was a possibility that the life ended at Sundance for this film. And so I wanted as many people to see the movie as possible. And so,
but I also think because we live in the age of social media, because so many more people saw it than would have been able to see it if Sundance had been in person. The Twitter conversation about the film kind of like up the ante. Like there were tangible, we could show potential buyers like there's an audience for this.
Yeah.
And people are going to want to see this and people are excited about it, and so I think that was just all the more helpful to selling it.
Yeah, that's great because that's the challenge is you're in the room and the distributors are in the back. And people start to freak out because they start walking out and you're like, oh shit, they hate the film. They've walked out. And then you realize they're walking out to call their boss and be like, hey,
start the deal.
So and they're basing their decisions off those audience reactions. So that had to kind of be terrifying to know that there was no audience, but having Twitter react,
We felt like we had an audience. As our film premiered, we were in real time seeing Twitter blow up. Right. Like, and people texting us and people posting things on Instagram and all these things. And so like, it felt like we had an audience,
So what was it like to shoot it during a pandemic? You shot in 2020 or 2021?
2021. Yeah.
Okay.
It was quite frankly, the COVID situation, like having to get tested every day and stuff like that.
It added to the budget.
Oh, yeah. That was the biggest, and having to wear masks all the time. We shot in June and July, so it was amazing in Atlanta. But other than that, it ran like every other set I had ever been on.
Yeah, we did have to get tested every single day.
Every day at that point. Yeah.
And
why every day? I mean, usually my husband gets tested 3 times a week and has for, the last 2 years. But why did you guys have to do every day? Was that like a SAG thing?
That's a good question. It might have just been I'm not sure what the COVID, it was COVID protocol. I was testing every day for sure. I don't know if everyone was. I don't know.
If you're coming to set every day, you had to test every day.
Well, she would have been, you were directing, right?
I was directing, yeah.
So being in pod A with everyone, technically,
by the tiers, it is different.
Oh,
so it's like,
we
were in on the show I'm on right now.
That was a lot of testing though.
We were in group A, so I get everyone in group A was testing every day. And they would come, and if you forgot to test, they would come to get you, find you. Yeah. They would be like, come to your test.
They do that now.
Yeah, they're still doing that.
Yeah.
But so maybe it depends on what, like, because they have you in pods and groups and stuff. Maybe it depends on that. But yeah, so we had to test every day and wear our mask all the time. And if you weren't wearing your mask, they would be, they were unrelenting.
Yeah.
But it was other than that, it felt like a regular film set, you know, and I think we kind of we ended up shooting the film, like you said, in June and July, and that ended up being this sweet spot, which was like people had started getting vaccinated. A lot of people were already vaccinated, and so people were more comfortable. And it was before like the Delta variant came out, and so we were kind of just in this sweet spot where people felt more relaxed about it, I think.
Yeah.
So it was, not too cumbersome.
No, it worked out.
Could have been worse. Didn't shut
could've been
down.
worse. We didn't shut down ever, which was a blessing.
Yeah,
And
because we couldn't.
and it was a very manageable film. I mean, I wrote it to be manageable. Coming from film school, I was used to making movies for no money, so I knew I wanted my first feature to be something actually producible.
Yeah,
and it ended up working out for COVID situations for sure.
Yeah. How long did you take to shoot it?
21 days.
Yeah. It was for me, that was very long.
It's short in reality.
It's short in reality, but
Oh, yeah.
like this production has to end.
It's exhausting. I moved from indie films to commercials and music videos, and then got out of music videos and did mostly commercials. My husband loves the long form. He's like, get me on a TV show for 9 months. I'll take 3 months off and bring me back for season 2. And that's his world. And I'm like, I want somebody new once a week, and I want to get out of bed for 2 weeks out of the month and then I can't.
It's tough.
It's
but then,
Fuck up for show running though, because then it literally never ends.
No,
You never have time off.
Yeah,
no, it doesn't stop.
We'll figure that out.
Then the show will have to end at some
Then
point.
yeah. We'll do like Donald and be like, this show is going on hiatus. That's what.
Or I'm about to just start doing limited series.
Or
There you go. Nice.
You'll get 2 to 3 limited series every 5 years out of me.
Yeah.
So did you end up in a bidding war, or did Focus, Peacock, and Jordan Peele come right in and just snatch it? And did they come in as like a threesome, or did Focus buy, like, how did that work? Because
they all came in
there were
together.
3 different companies.
Yeah. So one, there was a bidding war. There were a few different interested parties, and then it ended up coming down to like two big ones. But yeah, so Focus, Peacock, and MonkeyPaw all came in together because they're all essentially under the big NBC Universal umbrella. So Jordan has an overall with Universal, so MonkeyPaw has an overall with Universal. Peacock is obviously the streaming service for NBC Universal, and then Focus is also has a deal with Universal. They are like a big distributor for Universal.
Yeah.
And so they came in together. Yeah.
So I feel like every film that gets bought at Sundance, it goes into post-production. So it's kind of like back into, I call it, post-development hell. So are they taking the film now and kind of restructuring it, or adding footage, or changing it, or beefing up sound? Like, what happened since Sundance before it gets released? If you can talk about it.
Yeah, no, well, we have a release date, so anything that we do has to be done soon. Yeah. We haven't started yet, but we have a couple of tweaks that we want to make to it. But honestly, Focus and MonkeyPaw, they've been really supportive. They were like, we can release this as is, but if you guys want to make some changes, let's go ahead and do that. And so we're gonna take a look at a couple things.
Yeah.
And then it'll be released very soon, Labor Day.
And you got the money to make changes, so
I know. Well, that's the only way we can make changes.
Otherwise, it's coming out as is because we have our own money over here.
There's no more money.
Yeah. So I assume this will be theatrical.
Yeah. So it's gonna be the day and date model that a lot of people are doing. So it'll be released September 2nd, Labor Day, theatrically, but also same day on Peacock. But we're pushing people to go to the theatrical because we love the theaters. We gotta support the theaters.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was reading some of the descriptions, and there's a line that you wrote in a lot of the things that were published in 2019 that I was really curious about. And it, at the end of your kind of log line or our one paragraph synopsis, it says, it shows how most secular liberals misperceive the religious community. And having watched it, I was really curious about what that line meant, because I mean, obviously it's a satire and there's a lot to unpack in that movie. There's a lot of layers that, you know, maybe a more general white audience might not understand. But I mean, there's a lot going on. Mm-hmm. It seems like a very simple story, but it is not simple at all. It's very complex and layered. So that line, I was like, was that a line to kind of hook in these people as a way to make them question? Because most of these programs you were probably applying to had a lot of secular liberals. So like, where did that line come from? Because that's like what caught my attention in everything that I read. Maybe because I'm a secular.
Yeah, I think what we want a lot of people to do with this movie, what we want everyone to do with this movie, we want a lot of things, but one thing in particular that we want is for people to question everything and question everyone's motives. That's the motives of our leads. That's the motives of, you know, the surrounding townspeople, but also because the movie is you know, partly a fake documentary, the motives of the documentarian. And, you know, I think because people take documentaries as the perception of truth, but documentarians are human and they often come in with a perspective and a motive, and they're also creators. And so our documentarian is coming in and you know, what she's saying is that we just want to show the world, that we just want to show people what this world is. But she has a motive. And I think because I think we definitely grew up in the church, and I think we still describe ourselves as Christians, even if we're not, you know, super gung-ho on organized religion. I do think, and we have a lot of critiques of it, I do think there is a certain perception that secular liberals have of the church and organized religion that can prove to be a deficit. I'll say that.
Yeah, and I'd also say that, like, you know, the film is definitely a satire. Mm-hmm. It's definitely darkly comedic. And I think a lot of like secular liberal folks will be like, that's the point, that's it.
Right.
And what was really important for us with this film is to do that, right? Is to offer this critique and this examination of this institution that we think could be doing leaps and bounds better. But there is a layer of like beauty to it that I think is overlooked oftentimes while critiquing. And, you know, this is something that means a lot to a lot of people, to, I guess, like the majority of people in this country. And while to me, it's often ridiculous and misguided and dangerous and damaging, there is a beauty and a meaningfulness to it. And I wanted that to be a part of the movie and to be a part of the conversation, because to me, that's the main reason why we should be doing so much better, is because this could be so much better.
Yeah. And so while the film is definitely a critique, it's also kind of simultaneously a love letter to this culture, because it's what we grew up in.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I hadn't thought about it from the perspective of the documentarian, because you hear her voice, but in my mind, even as a filmmaker, I'm thinking that you guys made it, not that person, you know, so that layers upon layers.
Yes. We're excited to see, like, when the film is released wide, we're excited to see like, you know, Twitter theories about like, whose film is it? Is it our film? Is it the documentarian's film? Where does it, you know, where does it go in and out? The ins and outs of it. So
do you expect pushback?
Yeah.
I mean,
We've
yeah.
already gotten some pushback. But
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we only make things that would I guess garner pushback.
Yeah.
So it's whatever.
That's the only things that we make, really. Yeah. So we're
Good,
prepared
keep
for
doing
it. Yeah, we're prepared for it.
Yeah. So can you talk about what you're working on now?
Yeah. Ooh. It's a lot. We need a vacation.
So let me ask this before you start to talk about it, because oftentimes, once again, when you come out of Sundance and you have a big sale, suddenly, you get offers to go do things. And some people have taken those offers and some people have not, because it's not really working for what you want. Was this something that came out of Sundance, or was this something that you had already been planning on shooting and had nothing to do with Sundance, and this was kind of already on your docket?
Wait, did we get any opportunities out of Sundance that we didn't already have? Well, the short answer is we were offered a lot of opportunities coming out of Sundance, yes, because of like the heat of Sundance, but we already had so much going on that I think we've had to say no to like all of them.
To almost all of them, yeah.
So everything we're working on, like actively working on now, we're not catalysts of Sundance, I don't think.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And these are all stuff that you guys have self-originated.
Almost, except for
oh yeah, well I guess the news dropped yesterday that Donald Glover and Janine Neighbors have co-created a show starring Dominique Fishback, and I'm directing on it. I'm directing 3 episodes of it. That's what I'm.
Oh, wow.
That's why I'm on set right now.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah, but other than that, I guess maybe we can't talk about it.
Yeah. The reason I ask this is because the other thing that happens is these people come out of Sundance and they get trapped in, we're giving you all of these opportunities, and they take things that aren't right for them, and then they end up just spinning their wheels, and they can't get back to their own original content. They go to their original content, and then they're pitching all that, and everybody's like, here's a movie, here, do this, read this, do this. We're not going to go raise money for you. And you guys have said no to all these opportunities, and we're like, no, we've already got our own slate of stuff. And that's,
I mean, we've had to say no because we've had our own slate of things for a while. So we have like two original TV shows. Obviously we have to make sure Honk is in the right place to be released. And then we already have our next original feature film written. And so our team wants to go out with that sometime this year. And so I think you have to have, it depends on your mindset, like what type of creative you want to be. We're people who are constantly coming up with original ideas. It's like, I don't want to say voices in our head because that sounds.
I was going to say manic, and that also doesn't sound great.
But it is. That's what it feels. We're like constantly coming up with ideas, and so and it's important to have a team that knows and supports that, because a lot of people have like agents and managers and lawyers who are like, you just take the next big deal and go for that, and it could be a lot of money and stuff like that, but it might not be. It would mean putting your own personal thing on hold, and people make those decisions, but our team is very much supportive and like
make your stuff
to the point where like conversations about overalls, we're debating about whether or not to take an overall deal, because it usually is very financially lucrative. It can be very creatively limited because you can only work with a set entity. And so you just have to decide what you want and have a team that supports that, honestly. And our team is like, do what you want, basically.
Which is amazing.
That happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's very unusual. And especially as Black women, that's very unusual.
Yeah, it is. But you have to pick your team wisely. We picked our team very wisely. I think we have a lot of like younger people on our team. I think Greg, like, he's a partner at our agency, and he's the only one who's like, not like 40 and under. Everyone else is 40 and under, I think, on our team. And so
a lot of people of color.
And a lot of people of color, and women too.
And so a lot of women.
And so I think that just inherently changes the dynamics of things.
Absolutely. All right, so let's get back to what you're doing now.
Oh yes. Okay. So we're
I'm shooting the show.
You're shooting Hive, which is Donald Glover's show, Donald and Janine's show. We are Supply 404, which is one of our original TV shows. We have a few offers in on that, so we'll be, in the next month or so, that'll have like a home, and we'll be starting a writer's room for that. SSBBR and Super Shawty Girls Funkomatic Bang Bang. That might take a little bit longer, but we're hopefully going to open up a writer's room for that as well this year. And then what else are we doing? What else are we doing?
It's the feature. We're working on taking out the feature.
We're going to take out our next feature, our next original feature. And then we have a couple of other things that are not our original stuff that we are pitching on or, thinking about jumping into.
So keeping all the plates spinning.
Yes.
Yeah, constantly.
I don't miss that. I walked away from the business 5 years ago and it's fabulous. Like I can I can wake up whenever I want. I can do stuff whenever I want. I can go to lunch. I can make doctor's appointments.
I know.
I need a few doctor's appointments.
I know. Truthfully, the plan is to do as much as possible these first few years because we've only been full-time creators for 2 years.
Yeah.
So do this crazy stuff for the next couple of years, and then when we want to have babies and stuff like that, then we're gonna chill. But hopefully, then we would have stacked our money a little bit so that we can chill.
I don't believe you will chill. I believe you will be 9 months pregnant, both of you probably at the same time in a writer's room on set, whatever. Like you're not. Yeah, you're far too.
When we say chill, we mean like our level of chill, which is maybe only do 2 things instead of 6. Yeah.
So talk about, there's a ton of creatives in Atlanta. A lot of Black women in Atlanta that have ideas, that want to write. We need more people telling their stories. What advice do you have for either short filmmakers or independent feature writers or people who want to be in the, however they start? Do you have advice for young up and coming creators that may not be able to afford to go to college or may not be able to afford to film school? I think access to, you can literally take this and make movies now. You don't need to go get the most expensive cameras. What is advice you have for writers, directors, producers that are kind of up and coming in the industry like you guys were just a few years ago?
I think the cheapest and honestly the easiest way to sort of break in is to write. Like writing it can literally be free, not free of time, obviously. And there are writing programs that like people pay for and stuff like that, but there are affordable ones and free ones. Yeah, it used to be that Final Draft was like the only thing, and that cost like I don't know $600 or something ridiculous at the time. But now, like I think we have. Truthfully, I only have Final Draft because the writers room paid for it because I was not going to drop money on that. But a program that we use a lot is called Writer Duet, and it's basically like Google Docs but for screenwriting.
Oh, nice.
And it works really well for us because we write together. And other screenwriting programs, you usually have to write something and then, if you're writing with someone, like stop writing and send it to someone, or like the collaboration function is just a little bit like stickier and not as, but this one is literally, we can be in it at the exact same time.
And you see things change real time.
You see things change in real time.
We love it.
We love it, and it's a lot cheaper than a lot of others.
Also, there's a free version of it.
We
recently started paying for it because we use it so much.
But even like the pay, I think we have the premium version. I think that's like $80 a year. So it's like $80 compared to like $400 that's a big difference.
Yeah.
And so I like there are a bunch of alternatives out there for you to be able to do the thing. And then
writing is the way, because you even if you do go to film school, you graduate and nobody's going to be like, okay, come direct this TV show or come direct this big budget studio film.
Sure.
Usually directors have to break in by being writer directors. Like you got to write a movie, and
even if you don't want to write forever.
Even if you don't want to write forever, like that's usually their first way in. And so you got to write in order to break in. And a lot of people find it like arduous. It is time consuming, but it has to be. That is the easiest way.
You can also get a writing partner.
You can if you want. You can. But it's just the best way to creatively get your ideas out there.
It really and truly is. And if you're not a writer, like if you're a producer, like I was a producer first, and not a full-time producer at all. You find people. I think in Atlanta, there's, especially now, it's such a creative and entertainment hub. You find people who are doing things and making things, and you develop relationships with those people. Learn how to, and that's how you learn how to produce, but also then you hop onto people's projects and say, I feel like I can help you make this. Let me help you make it. And a lot of times, people need the help, so you just have to kind of do the thing. And it producing usually does not, and until it comes down to financing, producing usually doesn't cost any money to do. It's all kind of like practical and functional. There's creative producing as well, which also doesn't take any money to creatively produce. But you kind of just have to do the thing.
And I would also say write what you want to write, like make what you want to make, and be original. I think that a lot of times people get stuck in like seeing what's successful and try to remake that, or seeing like what's topical and be like, okay, now I need to make, like, I think there have been like so many things now that are about COVID or pandemics, and then you get inundated with that stuff. I think find your voice and what your original statement is, or what you specifically have to say. There is universality in specificity. I think we found, like, all of the projects that are taking off for us, our personal projects, have been things that are just wholly things that we would want to see, and weird stuff that we want to make, specific. And they're all highly specific. And we're finding a lot of success for that. So I don't try to like become anyone else. Don't try to copy anything. I always argue, don't even try to be topical. I think it's dangerous, and there's like short-sighted success. But make the stuff that you want to make, and don't let anybody try to tell you otherwise.
Yeah, exactly.
When it comes to writing, like, what is your process? Are you somebody who edits when you write? Are you a vomit on the page? Like, what is your process as a writer?
Oh, I think
it's highly unorganized. My process is highly unorganized, and then Adanne usually comes in organized.
I know. I don't like it. I mean, again, I went to law school, so we had to do outlines for every class, and so I'm a big outliner. Adamma does not like to outline. So usually, I mean, how our process usually works is, again, voices in our head. We have ideas about stuff, and then usually we get to a point where, like, this sounds really psychotic. We're like, a particular thing will not stop talking, and then we're like, okay, this is the idea. We have to like get it down on paper. And so I usually do the outline because I like outlines, and Adamma does not like outlines. And then once we have an outline, Adamma will usually be the first one to pick a scene, whatever scene is calling to her the most. And it doesn't have to be the first scene. It's whatever scene is calling to her the most. And then she'll put that scene down on paper. And then after that scene is down on paper, it's kind of just like ad hoc. We're both in there all at once, doing scenes, doing dialogue. It's a little disorganized.
It's chaotic, but it works for, like, my brain cannot digest it anymore.
I will say, for writers' rooms, we've had to be a little bit more organized, just because one, we're on tighter deadlines. We just can't like free write forever. And then also, we know other people are going to see it quicker than when we are just writing ourselves. So usually when we're in writer's room, again, we usually have to do an outline anyway. That's like a step in the room. So we do the outline, and then we split up the outline and we start writing the actual draft via acts. And so usually 3 acts or 6, depending on if it's an hour long or half hour, but we split it up by acts.
So, you've said when you were giving advice, you said, find your voice. It sounds like you guys have found your voice, and it's in your head and it speaks to you, which is not a bad thing. Like, that is just, that's just intuition and inspiration and everything that you are coming out with what's important and what you're passionate about. But a lot of young talent hasn't found their voice yet. Like, are there is there advice on finding your voice, either as a writer or as a storyteller and filmmakers? You know, how did you, like, do you feel like, oh, I found my voice and I know what that is? And if so, how did you get there?
Well, I think it's probably consumption. We were just constantly consuming story and different types of stories. We were English majors in college and took AP, mostly AP English classes and literature in high school. And so we were just exposing ourselves to so many different types of stories and kinds of stories. And I think through that we realized what we were drawn to the most.
Yeah.
Which was probably like a lot of like high fantasy and science fiction, and then a lot of satire and dark comedy was like, yeah. And also just like we, as much as we were watching a ton of TV and film, but we were also watching a ton of animation and anime and reading manga. And I feel, our personal feelings on animation in general is that it is absolutely boundless. Yeah. And there's just so many, like anime specifically, there's so many genres and then subgenres and then sub-genres that there are all these different layers of voices. And so it's I feel like it just became really natural for us to be able to weave in and out of different types. Yeah. And I think that's what our voice is, not any one thing. I don't think, like, we love to play with like tone and themes and stuff. And so it's really just consumption, I think, and exposure.
And I would say probably what you consumption. I think probably what you like to consume the most is probably the closest to what your voice is gonna be a lot of times. Because we're like, I'm thinking like, what was our first I think our first satire really is something that we read as millennials growing up, a series of unfortunate events. And that book is a straight up satire. I don't think we realized that it's a dark comedy, dark comedy
for children.
about children, where all these terrible things happen.
But it's also every other page is about death or trying not to die.
But it's also very, very funny. Yeah. And it's also about how like the adults are the essentially the children are parenting all these adults who are like just. But it's I think stuff like that.
Sorry, I don't know. Someone got very loud in our house.
Sorry.
I didn't hear it. That's okay.
But yeah, so I think the things that you consume the most are going to be the things that are closest to your voice. Again, we consume a lot of different things, and so our voice is kind of an amalgamation of things. But that's probably, if you're like unsure about what your voice is, just look at the things that you like to watch and read and listen to, and that could probably be a good first step to figuring it out.
Probably an indicator.
Yeah, that's great advice. So is your love of animation and anime what led you to create Super Shorty Girls?
Yeah.
Like, how did that? Yeah.
We knew, just like we said, we love TV and film equally. We love animation and live action equally. And so we knew that we were going to want to work in animation, just like we worked in live action. And so that's how we knew we wanted to have like a proof of concept for a feature after, Adamma graduated from film school. We knew we wanted to have kind of like a proof of concept animation. We wanted to take advantage of UCLA's resources basically and do as much as possible there. So yeah, that's our love for animation is definitely what inspired us to create SSBB.
Yeah.
I can't wait to see what you guys do. I'm really excited. I mean, this, it's nice to see people who more and more people coming out of Atlanta or coming out of Georgia, even if they're moving to LA, like having success there, because most of them bring that success back home in some way, shape, or form, whether it's coming back to shoot because of our tax incentives or just because they love Southern stories. But I can't wait to see what you guys do next. And I'm very excited about following your careers.
Absolutely. Well, we write everything to shoot in Atlanta.
Yeah, absolutely everything.
So we're and again, we plan on moving back here very, very shortly. I think for us, it made sense at the time to start our careers in LA and establish ourselves.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And I think, honestly, I don't think we would have gotten, our representation and, a lot of the opportunities that we've had, I don't think we would have had if we had not been in LA. But we are also very, very passionate about making Atlanta that same type of space. And so like people,
and it's already happening.
and
Like,
it's
so
already
gonna be
happening.
easy.
And you know, everyone shoots here all the time, but we feel really, really passionate about people developing here, like having our agency is opening up an office here, which is very, very exciting for us. So development needs to happen here. Writers' rooms need to happen here. Like a lot needs to happen in Atlanta outside of production. But I think it's
on its way
coming to be.
Yeah, that's, I think the biggest thing that we're missing here is writers' rooms and development. Because, you know, I started a writer's room about 10 years ago that was like a volunteer thing. I wanted people to learn how to write log lines, synopsis, treatments, put pitch packages together, understand what lookbooks were like. And out of all that, we started writing spec scripts. And then out of that, started writing a spec pilot. And then out of that, I was like, okay, you guys have learned stuff. Can we not meet every month now? And they wanted to write. And I was like, well, I've thought about writing a TV series set in North Florida where I moved. And now they're actually meeting today to talk about that stuff. So, you know, but that's one of the few, because all the writers are in LA. You know, I think Donald, his first year, the writers were in Atlanta simply because he and his friends were the writers. So it made sense to have them here, but nobody has them here. And I know, you know, COVID has kept a lot of, you know, has allowed people to work remotely. But unless you've made a name for yourself in LA or elsewhere, you're not getting those opportunities. And there are so many people who come through my classes at Atlanta Film Society, even the PA Academy, that's what they want to do. They want to get in a writer's room, but they can't, you know, not that Atlanta is getting any cheaper these days, but they can't afford to move out to LA. And there's no training ground. There's, you know, for development or writers here. So maybe you guys can help spark all of that.
That's the goal. Honestly, we don't want to do this just for ourselves. We want, you know, we love Atlanta and we love the film community here has been integral to our success, from our short films through Honk for Jesus. And you know, Supply has to shoot here. Supply will shoot here. Our next film will probably shoot here, either maybe in Savannah or maybe South Carolina. We'll see. But like, you know, we love this place and we love the film community here. So we want to help build it up. Yeah, we want it to thrive.
Well, we are lucky to have you. I can't wait. I may be calling you next year, depending on what you got going on, but you're going to be too busy for me.
Please put in the call though. Please put in.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and we love the Atlanta Film Festival specifically. We were we know it didn't quite work out where Honk could show, but we wanted to participate in any way we can because we love the festival.
Yeah. And we appreciate that. When is the release date? Can you say?
Yeah, the release date is September 2nd, which is Labor Day. So
oh my gosh, that's so far away.
Oh, well, it feels incredibly close because we still got to make some changes and get it in, you know. The 2nd is not the due date for when we got to turn it in. But yes, Labor Day weekend is when it'll be out. So take your friends, take your mama, take your granny.
Absolutely. It's a great film and the performances are amazing. I mean, everything about it was amazing. You know, because it was small, it seemed easy to make during a pandemic, but watching it didn't feel like it was shot for no budget because you had such big, open, beautiful spaces. So you both did an incredible job. Congratulations on everything.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your directing. Congratulations on your producing and your writing as a team. And thank you all for joining us at the Atlanta Film Festival and Creative Conference. Hopefully you will see more great films and you'll check out more of the Creative Conference and see the next up and coming stars this year out of our short films or features. And hopefully, I don't know if anybody will be as successful as you ladies have been. But
for sure,
definitely.
I hope so, because y'all got it going on. I mean, you literally, I'd say you're the triple threat, but you know, you both have individual talent and then together you're like a superpower. So this is really exciting. Sorry, I'm gushing because I just am excited to meet like smart women making films and especially a producing, directing, writing team. You know, I'm tired of seeing dudes everywhere all the time. So
that's true.
Same.
All right. Thank you, ladies, for your time. I greatly appreciate it. Thanks,
you.
everybody, again, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks,
Bye.
y'all.
Bye.
Bye.